you, Louisa Lee. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of So Zoom In. I love bringing you people who are in the creative flow, and the creative flow is more than just the arts because life itself is a creative flow. So thank you so much for joining us.
And it's been so long since I've seen you, so thank you so much for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. And woman, you are amazing. You spent over a month in Egypt. I am just like, I am blown away. I love it, and I want to hear all about it.
Yeah, well, I went in December, and for 2 weeks with a woman I met named Magical Michelle. And after being there for 3 days, I was looking like, how can I stay here? Because I'm gonna tell you, like, I go to the chiropractor, I go to, acupuncture, but I felt so good. Like my body felt so good when I was there. And I was like, I know this is because this is the Earth Energy Center, right? And this is the ley lines. And I was there with 5 women, and it was just amazing. My first actual stop that time was Saqqara, I believe it's Saqqara. And we were in Giza, and I was just looking around, and I looked and I said, this was all under the ocean. And I was looking and I was picking up rocks, and I was seeing what I thought, diatoms, I don't know. I won't get too deep into that, but because it's like geological, like when you think about the ocean, the little things that are floating in the ocean floor, I was just like amazed. And then I looked up, okay, these are made of limestone. Limestone is sediment. Sediment is under the water. And I was like, oh, this, like some things were just coming together just from being there. And
now this was the first time you were there?
The first time I was there. And then I was just seeing, you go places like Karnak and Luxor temples. Honestly, you will get, not that you get tired of it, but you will get like exhausted. Like, how can you take another picture? How can you actually express what this is here? Because it was so like breathtaking. And then to see these things that are supposed to be carved, but perfectly all the way around every pillar. Oh, but there's 36 pillars, and then the walls go up like 30 feet. And I came out of it with another young lady, and I said, what if this is like a laser printer, or, like some type of a mold made, or like, it was just, how could anybody do this by hand? And we were just getting a lot from it. Like, this isn't what we think it is, like slaves don't make this, like, this is
art, right?
Art,
All right, I have to ask though. All right, so before you went in December, what inspired you to go to Egypt? Because it's,
you would be surprised.
Yes, and that's because
it was so haphazard, because I've been making resin ankhs for necklaces for over a year now, right? But did I have an idea that I was going? No, it was never. And some people say bucket list, I guess, maybe. I mean, because when I think of my bucket list, I always think of like Ireland and Iceland. And I knew I wanted to go back to Europe because I lived in Germany, but it wasn't like on the forefront. So what happened, we went through our little Holocaust situation, and we were all trapped in the house. And I was really read the Sophia code, and we talked about that one time. And I said, well, how do I find new friends that are near me? And I went through that Sophia code group, and I said, well, we must have something in common in our beliefs. And I met this woman named Magical Michelle. And Magical Michelle was like, okay, great. She does theta healing. And she's like, would you be a student, not a student, but a test subject, like a subject one day? And then she told me about the trip. And I had a car accident some months earlier, and I knew I was waiting for my settlement. So I said, you know what, the hell with it, I'm going. I'm gonna take my money and I'm gonna go. And I took Egyptology class and took some theta healing, and like, it just set a wave because I was just looking for people that were local that I could be friends with, and that's it. And then I ended up on this trip and I was like, I'm supposed to be here. So even when I came back, a friend of mine did this astro clicks and they looked at my chart, and I guess in astro clicks, they stretch your chart across the planet to find out where your Jupiter lines lay. And my Jupiter line lay right there through Egypt.
Okay. So for people who don't know, what exactly does that mean?
Well, your Jupiter is where you find success, where you find notoriety, where you find success in business, and where you're accepted and most happy.
Okay.
And so it's said that basically, like, you'll be happy there, people will love you for some reason, and you'll be successful there. And I felt it when I was there too. I was just learning a lot about my love energy too, that I actually have this energy. So while I'm thinking like, wow, this is strange. Why do people keep coming up to me and wanting to talk to me about their problems or just to connect to me, and why they receive me? But it's the love energy that is inside of me from being like a galactic super center that is just something that I embody. And so when I was there, I mean, I took pictures with so many people, hugged so many people. Even if I can't speak their language, they were just like attracted and I was attracted. And so the last time I was there, I was invited back. Like, so many people were like, come back and stay with me and come back and visit me. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do that.
All right. So you went the first time, you came back. How long was it before you went back again?
6 months.
6 months. And did you stay with anyone you met the first time, or what happened?
Yeah. I had some friends in Dendera, and they showed me around and they took me to more homes. So I was like some nights like hanging out with the mayor of Luxor at the coffee shop while they smoked shisha.
What's shisha?
And it's basically, it's tobacco. It's not, I guess it's almost like for us, it would be like hookah, but it's shisha. It's a tobacco, and they put it on one of those lamps and they, with the water and suck it out. And I'm just there drinking like cappuccinos, and they're just, men gathering, smoking shisha. And I'm like, is it okay if I'm here at night with you? Like with all these guys? Because like women aren't coming out doing that, but it's like, yeah, you're different. You're American, so you can do that. So
okay.
So I'm hanging out with the mayor of Luxor, and then at one point I end up going to Aswan, and I stayed with a family in Aswan, and then I stayed with that person's family, Adam's family in Dendera. I stayed with them for a while too. But in the meantime, we were just traveling, and I got to go to more temples, some temples that I didn't get to go to the first time. And I was really working. This time I'm working on my own meditation, because the first time I went, it was a tour. And it's like, okay, we got 30 minutes, on your own. And it's kind of quick. And honestly, it's not enough. It's like, no matter what, it's not enough. It's just not enough.
So the first time you went into a temple, what did that feel like? Because I know you're really tuning into your own spirituality and you're really going deep. What's the difference between that and being just a regular tourist?
Wow, for me, yeah, it's interesting too, because I saw one man, he was from Boston, and he went in the pyramids and he came right back out, and he was like, I'm only here for 3 days. And I was like, how do you do that? It was like, what? But no, when I was there, I don't know. I felt like I was back in the space of being a small child, because see, for me, it started at the pyramids, and I was looking at every rock and like with amazement, like I wanted everything I could get. And then when the first time I went into one of the temples, like Hatshepsut temple, that was amazing for me, because it's can you imagine being like a mile away and just seeing all this rock, and then in front of it, a temple that's been carved out of the surrounding rock, then you're just in awe of how huge this is and how does someone do this. And so then when I go inside, this was one of the first ones that really affected me, because one of the guards literally pulled me aside and wanted to show me. He was like, we can take pictures in this room. But literally what he was wanting to do, he asked me to pray for him. And I was just lit up because, number one, it was like a man. I assume he was Muslim. He might have been Coptic, but that he asked me to pray for him. And I was just lit up, shivering during that experience. I mean, I would have these experiences where I'm just like pouring down tears because it just was hitting me so deeply. Another one I went to was, was it? No, it's not. Yeah, it was Horus's temple. And when I was there, this is where the recipes are on the wall for the oils. But immediately, like as I'm in there, it's fluttering on top of my head. I can feel the buzzing, and then it begins to go down my spine and my whole, and I'm just like, ooh, because this is such a good feeling. I'm just like, oh my God, this is so good. And like all my chakras are lighting up, and I'm just feeling really good. But I just keep having these scenarios where I have interactions with different guards, and I think where people are kind of just like staring at me, and I'm like, oh, is it because I have blue hair? Like people just love it because I have blue hair, and they're like, I'm like taking pictures with people. But I really think more so it was the energy that we were exchanging, and I was like really feeling these connections. Another one most powerful, when I went to Dendera, before we even went into the temple, they have like little courtyard seating areas. So we sat there to get ready. And in that particular time, we were sitting there, and I began to think about the womb healing for my mother, my grandmother, my grand aunt, and through my bloodline. And I'm streaming in tears. And I wish I had set it aside, but I found this most Venus looking rock that it was so shapely and so curvy. And I was like, oh, I know this is a message for me, right? This beautiful Venus shaped rock. And when I go inside, I'm at this point, I'm kind of pulling away from trying to listen so much to the guide, but just listening to the energy that's calling out to me. The ceilings there, that's where you see Newt and Hathor in the ceiling, and Hathor on each side, which most of the temples have Hathor on each side of the pillars, but this one has so much more color, and it was just so beautiful. This is, the first time, and we go to the back, there's a separate Isis temple, because where you might have, this is Hathor's temple, there's these other temples outside, and we go see the little Isis temple, but we're not allowed to go in. There's like a gate, so we're just sitting on the steps, and the other ladies move, and me and my teachers, we're just really, doing our prayers, and a guard comes up, because a lot of times you're not allowed to hold hands, and you're not allowed to be in circles, and you're not allowed to pray or make any motions that show that you're actually praying. And I'm thinking, okay, we're getting kicked out.
Why is that? Why do they have those rules?
Well, you have to think too, like I would also assume too, people become emotional, or large groups of people, would come gather, you know what I mean? Like if you let people do things, and then it becomes this out of control thing, but then also too, if that is a different religion than yours, like, are you a witch? Are you a Christian? Whatever it is, you're not Muslim. You're not of the majority of people there are Muslim. And I guess I assume that this is why. Okay. That they don't, it's not the commonly practiced religion, but it seems to be that in Dendera is a little bit different. That I know that there are people called Sufi that are what we would say we're not Christian, maybe we would be saying that we're spiritual. So we believe some of Christianity and we believe Buddhism, and like we respect all together. So some people there are maybe Sufi, but this particular man, instead of actually making us leave, he actually unlocks the gate and lets us in there, and he anoints us with oil. And he's like, do you want me to show you how we pray in this room? And I was like, oh my God. So we're like, okay, thank you so much, you know? So I get to go in there, and then we get to go in the well where you get the water for the priest to wash off. And I've been told that, so I went in there, I got my water, and I'm like, oh my God, like luckiest girl in the world. And I've had friends that have been guides there, a woman, she's like 60 years old. She says, I've never been able to go in there, down in that well. I've never been invited to do that. So I was like, I'm really being received, you know? And so that's what leads to me coming back. And it's that experience really holds on to me, to where when I come back the second time, I have an even more phenomenal time the next time when I go. I get to see more places. Like I went back to the Karnak temple this time, but now I'm more educated. That first trip, I think I connected emotionally, and I tried to stay away from interpreting too much of what everyone is saying everything is, to wanting to receive on my own just energy. So the whole time I'm saying, give to me the energies and keys that belong to me and leave behind the rest. Any energy that doesn't belong to me. I think this is what is so important about us visiting sites like this, whether it be Ireland, whether it be Wichita, wherever you go, like we've been to certain places before, that we collect our energies from these places and heal our fragments. Like I've done some past lives, but I don't necessarily go searching and doing, you know, too much with that. Instead, I'm more asked to receive my soul fragments. And I feel like that prepares me for this path to go visit certain places and have that knowing of, I've been here before, or even preparing me for challenges that come up in the future. What should I do about this? Oh, I've already collected the part of me that learned this lesson. Now I can deal with it better. So I don't necessarily go with the hard factual first, but then I went back and then study a little bit and say, this is why you, like, I'd rather prove myself right.
Right.
After the fact, like, this is why you cared so much about this. Even this thing with Newt, on my second visit, I started to really become attached to Newt. Like, my God, she must be so important. She separates herself to create the sky and has to basically separate from her counterpart, which is Jeb, and he becomes the earth and she becomes the sky. Isn't this like the story of Sophia? Like I kept seeing a repeat of this Sophia story, separating into two genders to become and to make creation. And then I realized, oh yeah, I remember we had a class and they talked about Newt, but then when I was not really so into the class, right? I was just not there at that time, but then I went and I started to just think more about Newt, and I did like a whole recording about Newt where I'm just really thinking about Newt as she absorbs Ra and he goes into her stomach, and like you're swallowing your father energy and then giving birth to it every day. I was like extremely intrigued. And then I went back and said, oh my God, we had a class on that. Let me go check this class out. Like,
right.
So now it's just become to this point where I know I have to live there now, because I can't just study it a little bit. I have to keep going back and keep absorbing it until I have the full understanding for myself, and comparing what is in maybe the books and seeing it exactly what it is that I see for myself. Another part with Karnak that was so cool, we went to Karnak the first time and we got to see Sekhmet, and Sekhmet, just standing in front of that black stone, you have to feel something.
Okay.
Each lady was just like in awe of her. And if you take a regular picture, you don't see it, but in video, you see the orbs flying around her.
Wow.
And you just feel like grateful. Like I was just so extremely grateful. A lot of times when I'm in there, it's the spaces, I try to focus on gratitude first. And I know that was another place where I just really felt so good. But I didn't even know the first time about the little red temple that Hatshepsut made not far from it. And I got to see that red temple. And now it's like 15 different Sekhmets sitting right there. And I'm like, holy cow. I don't know. I was just like,
What is the little red temple? What is that?
it's just, it's an open air temple, and it has like a bath shaped, almost like a sarcophagus, but it's like a bath shaped thing in the middle. And it has the 4 pillars, and it's a worship area that Hatshepsut had made. But then it also has like another area with pillars, and it's beautiful. I'm sorry I didn't share the pictures with you, but I can share it with you after the fact. But it's just not on the tour package normally that go to this spot. It's, if you don't know it's there, you'll skip it because everybody knows about the little Sekhmet temple that's in there, right? And so I was just like, oh my God, look at this. It's a lot of the things there you see either are shaken or fallen, maybe not all the way put together, because these segments that were there, some of them are broken, some of them are missing parts. And so it's like all this stuff that still has to be worked on or put back together. Or maybe it won't be put back together. I don't know. But these little areas where it's just not the most popular. Like I did not know Khonsu's temple was there, but now I was really interested in Khonsu because after the first trip I came home and then we saw Moon Knight about Ahmed. Do you know about that show?
Right, on the Disney Channel. Right.
Yes. And so all this time, I'm not even knowing who Ahmed is, even though I watched the show. I'm like, Khonsu, I want to see Khonsu. So Khonsu's temple, so there's Sekhmet, and then there's the little red temple on the opposite side of that Karnak temple. There's Khonsu's temple. So this time I get to go see it, but still not even understanding the significance of Ahmed and who Ahmed is. We go to it, but this is also under construction. There's a lot of people inside that are, it's small, but there's a lot of people inside doing work. So it wasn't like this where I get to stay and focus, but I got to see it and I was really excited. Like, oh my God, this is the temple from Moon Knight. At that same temple, there's the 7 keys and the 7 doors. And this now it's like, we're getting into some heavy duty walking because these places are like football, like maybe that place is the size of a football field. I should actually look this up because it was a lot of walking. Now we get to this part with the 7 keys and the 7 doors. But in that little area, I get to have my own time to meditate and do my own affirmations and stuff there. So that was really awesome. But I'll say this, by the end, I went to see this papyrus store and here's Anubis standing next to the scales. And there's this thing like a little dog next to the scales. And now you do know, like Anubis weighs the heart against Mot's feather. If the heart is no good, Ahmed is the little thing down on the side that gets to eat the heart when the heart is no good. So it's this it's got a crocodile head and it's got the bottom half like a hippopotamus and it looks like a little dog. And it's just sitting by the scales. And this is who Ahmet is. So on Moon Night, on the show, what happens is Ahmet is out of balance. And instead of waiting for the person's heart to be weighed after they die, she wants to eat their hearts while they're alive. And that's what Moon Night is all about, is Ahmet losing her stuff and being like, no, we're not going to wait. We're going to do it now. And it's like, wait, you can't do that. But it's funny because the Disney characters, they don't, of course, they've done a good job with like creating a whole new look.
Right.
Because Khonsu actually looks like Horus. And so on Moon Night, you don't see it. But when you see who Khonsu is, Khonsu looks like Horus, but he has a disc on his head and a moon on his face. And so it's another hawk like Horus. But on there, I guess he looks like a skeleton bird. So you don't really see that he actually looks like Horus. So even watching Moon Night, I don't get the whole thing until I go there, go to the temple, and then go to the store and then see, oh, this is what Ahmet looks like. And this is who Ahmet is. And so to me, it's just been this like, I know it's probably a lot of money to pay to go learn what you can learn in a book, but
but you're feeling all the energies there too. Did you feel like there are different energies with different places you went, or?
Definitely, because I could say when I went to Horus's temple, I would get agitated. Like, I feel a little bit aggressive right now because I noticed it. Like when I was coming out, I was kind of being a little bit snippy, a little bit more extra. And I was like, is this Horus? Is this Horus's energy with me? But then when I say this time I went back to the Dendera temple and I was able to this time I was not just going through that one tunnel in the ground, the one with the, you know what I'm talking about, with the two snakes inside the lights. I get to go into another crypt, but then I start going into the crypts that are in the ceiling. And then that's when I lose it. Every time I see a new Hathor, my heart is just like boom, 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 and I'm just losing it. So one of the crypts that I end up going in, this is the wall.
Wow.
And so like you would see my little head right here, like my head is small, and I'm just like, oh, like, because you don't know that you're gonna see her giant face inside this little room. And I just was, I lost it. But I love her. I'm learning about her. But this time I went with the understanding of, okay, there are the Hathors, right? That some, the Native Americans would have called her the seven sisters of the Pleiades, right? But then even after I returned, I had seen another woman wrote an article that it's either there's 300 to 400 different Hathors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That it's not just one, because it's a race, right? The Hathors is a race. It's not like a person. I'm at the very beginning of understanding this, but I assume that because it's a race and it has so much to do with bringing us through the portal of creation, that they share the same energy. That we have so many different personalities, which I assume they would have different personalities, but they really share more of the same energy. It'll be hard for us to understand something like that because we don't share the same personality, nor do we have the same energies here. It's very different than we would understand. But I even started to understand more too, because in the very beginning, you would start with Tefnut and then come down to Nut and then Hathor, because in the part of the ceiling in Dendera, you see Hathor coming out of Nut's stomach. I don't know if you had seen a picture of this, but if you all get a chance to look at that, Hathor is coming out of Nut's stomach. So here it is, the Hathors being the seven sisters of the Pleiades are a part of the Milky Way. So this is, Nut is the night sky, and Hathor being the Milky Way that's coming through her in the middle. And then, you know, it's also said that what Sekhmet and Hathor are the same person, that, and it's hard to understand in mythology how the energies are separating into these different things. But for one person, I said, it's like, Sophia, you're a mom, but you also have a certain job. And at your job, you're not the same as you are with your daughter. You don't keep the same level of intensity, right, maybe. But then if you're your wife, you're expressing a different aspect of yourself with your spouse, and a different aspect with your mother, where we can be the same person, but different to each person.
Exactly.
So, but then here we are too, like your daughter is a version of you, right? And that's a new version of you. So is it the child version, or is it the separate personality versions? And I think some parts it is, as Sekhmet and Hathor, it seems more that it's the mom versus the wife versus the woman at work. That type of separation to create what is Sekhmet. So there's different versions or different beliefs on the separations of these different gods, what it means, because in Egypt they call it the natures, right? It's just the nature. So if you have the nature of Hathor, then you'll be Hathor, right?
So how do people decide what nature you are? I mean, who's to say?
I guess over time, in Egypt, what they called the natures, like Hathor, because she was motherly, you make her into a cow, the ultimate giver of milk, because she gives the nourishment, right? And so they say that the cow is the embodiment, or that Hathor is the embodiment or the nature of a cow, that giver. Currently, no, I don't know how, but I'm thinking for some people, and they say, well, I'm the reincarnation of this. It's not necessarily that you are Hathor or this particular person, but you're maybe either a descendant of, so blood-wise, like the child of, or you're the embodiment of that energy. You very much resemble that energy and resonate or vibrate at that same frequency as that particular entity. Like, I've even heard too that certain people, like, it's not Betty Davis, Marilyn Monroe, that Marilyn Monroe has been interpreted to be a reincarnation of Venus and Aphrodite. Because for some reason, people loved her in this way with no explanation of what is it she did in particular that made people love her, except for embody this supple energy that is very similar to what Aphrodite or Venus is described as.
And they still do. And they still do.
And they still do.
It's amazing.
So it's taking me into a study of, or understanding of, because I went in December and I went in January and I will go back in December. So I would like it will get to this point. And two, this trip, what I was doing was getting a deeper understanding of places for people to go, and like how to make this better, how to make it better when people come, that they can observe for themselves the energy that suits them, and that they can feel comfortable by coming with me to do more of a self-discovery or group self-discovery, where they discover things as individuals and we get to talk about, like, well, what did we learn on this field assignment? What did we get? And then actually I found places where you actually could light candles, incense, and we could actually do prayers and things like that, so that people can actually do this without feeling pressure, because some of these temples, they literally have people with machine guns. Like I walked with a guy with a machine gun. I was like, can I test that one out? Like, can I try it out? I was in the army, like I can shoot. I always, I don't allow people to frighten me.
There you go. Okay.
But and I know he just thought like, this girl is silly, but I never felt like afraid or anything, but I just deal with people where they're at. But I know that there's places where you can't do things, but then I know there's places that you can totally have some freedom. And I want to be able to take people back with me to do that. And I had developed pretty much January or December when I left. I said, what I would like to do is move there on a 2-year timeline. So I'm on a course of setting myself, getting ready to move there. And
Wow.
I have some plans on building space that people can come and hang out with me in this space and
Which
and
part?
Luxor. So I had always intended to move to Luxor, and now I have an invitation. Hey, come back and stay here.
Wow.
And you can come and stay here in Luxor. And I just like, oh my God, you mean I can go back to the Karnak temple and just stay there all day, and I can go to the museum all day, or, and so I see myself being called back constantly, but also just being received by the proper people. So I'm definitely meeting the right people that can allow me to basically turn this into a life study for me.
Wow. But what seems like I've been seeing more and more people offering tours to Egypt, like so many different places. And it seems like, there's a new energy of ancient Egypt coming up that's appealing to so many different people. Do you feel like that's true? Do you feel like there's this new insurgence of the energy of ancient Egypt having a new
rebirth? I guess you would describe it as a renaissance. There is a renewal because, I forget which card it is. It's the Tower card in the tarot deck, and was coming up a lot in 2020, remember? And that is what? The breaking of the old institution and welcoming, and breaking apart and coming back to spirituality. And it seems like what better place to do it than going back into time, into history, and learning more about where things came from. Because when you start to look at Tefnut and her counterpart, it is the darkness and the void, and then the water separates. These stories are the Bible stories. That the earth separates from the sky, and then the water separates from the earth, and then breathing life into mankind, that to better understand the story, because you're getting a condensed version of the story in the Bible that you can't really fathom. And now you're taking it into a pictorial and a view of understanding a separation of energies that, of course, I don't see why you wouldn't come back to this place for the explanations. A lot of people have approached me to say, well, Egypt is in America. And I'll say, no doubt, that is something I will never argue with you about, because that's an unknown, because we don't know which one was first. But definitely, I believe that when I go there, I focus on the energy. So I know that this is a genuine, this isn't a fake Egypt, as some people have said, because it has the ley lines and the markers, and it has the actual energy. But what I believe is that I threw 2 things forward to this person, and they never spoke to me again. It was really funny. Because they're like, okay, she's even crazier than I am. Okay, like, so there is a theory that, all the continents, if you put them on a puzzle, they really do fit together.
Right.
So the earth is expanding. So over time, the continents come apart, and we're constantly still expanding to this day. And I forget what you call that theory, but I heard it from Bruce Agnew at a conference, and I was like, oh my God, I thought they fit together. But if that's the case, then how would you separate Egypt from any other part of the world, right? You know, because if you came and you said, this is now called Terra, then it's called Terra. If it's called, you know, like, this is what it is. And then it begins to separate. So that's one theory. I said, what if the whole thing is Egypt? And he was like, ma'am.
Well, but then if you think about it, Earth is a living being. And if you go to ancient Egypt, you know, even the mythology of it, you know, the Earth was embodied, by Osiris too also, right? And then, and before Osiris was...
You said before Osiris?
Before Osiris, yeah.
Yeah, there's the father of Osiris. Well, Jeb is supposed to be the father of Osiris, but Ra is the father of the gods, period, like Ra,
but
right?
It's still a living entity, or living, I mean, we call it Mother Earth or Gaia. I mean, the different cultures have different names for it, but
different names.
Very living, you know, and then it picks, and its energy frequency, which picks up. And so it is, I truly believe it's constantly expanding and growing, you know, different ways.
So then why isn't, you know, I was saying that, you know, because you have to think that before the Bible is recorded, there's these things that are happening before. And so now they're just telling you a story that they heard from the past. So maybe at some point, the whole thing was Egypt, or the whole thing was, you know, it changed names over time, and it is all these different things. I said, so what if the whole thing is Egypt? But then here it is, we know that I lived in a small town. Okay, so no, say in the 1600s, right? There's Roanoke, and you build Roanoke. And then these people, they break off and they're like, okay, we're going to start a new town. And then they start, you know, Richmond. What happens is they go and make the same Capitol building that they had in Roanoke. They got that in Richmond. They build a new town square, and then there's a thing called Main Street, and then there's a church, and then there's a bank, and then so what happens is the same things that were made here are moved somewhere else and duplicated. The only difference was, did it start over here first or over there first? Because they're saying that the Mississippi River is still the Nile, and that Memphis in America is the true Memphis and not the one in Egypt. And I was like, maybe that's true too, but it doesn't mean that this isn't real. It just means they found the same thing here that they did there, and then they duplicated it.
Right.
Because, and why would I even say that? As I was standing there and I was looking at the pyramids for the first time, and I'm looking at all these temples, I'm looking up and I'm saying to myself, this isn't just here. This is everywhere. This is on other planets. So if I came here from space and I create this here, of course, everywhere I go, I'm going to keep creating the thing that I know, and I'm going to create it in other places. And I'm going to do what? I'm going to measure the energy, and I'm going to find the ley lines, and I'm going to, this is the center of the building, because this is how scientific and mathematic they are, that, you know, they've chosen the points. They know exactly where to put the cone and the, you know, the geometry of the buildings. And the scientific mind goes and does this someplace else. And I know some people, they have an argument of God and science. And I've never had that argument. And in my mind, I've always thought, well, God has to be the ultimate scientist, because how do you allow me to have lungs to breathe with little blood cells that carry oxygen to the lungs and to my heart? And then if you measure the atmosphere, there's a certain amount of everything, right?
Exactly. It's one and the same. Yeah.
This percentage of that, and it works in a perfect cycle where a tree puts out oxygen and takes in my dirty carbon dioxide and then makes it into air I can breathe. Like the symbiotic nature of this whole planet, would God not have to be the ultimate scientist of some sort? So I've never had an issue with separating God from science. because it has to all be one, right? Because honestly, if our little equation goes off balance, we're completely screwed.
It's true. But yet people keep trying to do that. They keep trying to, let's cut down all the trees, let's, let's.
It's mind blowing that we need another empty mall.
If we need to just genetically modify food, we need to change it.
Yeah. My sister was asking me about CERN the other day, and you're just wondering about the person with the mindset that wants to play with certain stuff. And you're like, who is this guy that does these things? But anyway, we'll move away from that. Who is the guy that does this? Like, don't you know we need?
But then again, even going back to, what you were talking about earlier about, not segment, the one who would want to eat the hearts.
Yeah, Ahmed.
It's
out
like
of balance.
You have the flow of energy, but then you start having these energies like, well, I want to do something different. It's like, I want to break the rules and make my own rules. And is that human nature? Is that the nature of energy? You're in a flow, and in order to create change, you have to have some sort of chaos to create.
Chaos has to exist. And I would say in Egyptology, it's welcomed, because they know that out of chaos, there's creation. So it's never been a matter of like, people would like to make God or gods into good and bad. And they really, in Egyptian mythology, there is no like good, bad. There's moral ambiguity. There's moral relativity. So, even in the Greek gods, which they're all the same, they're just like different names, it seems. And I'm like, oh my God, like, you're learning which ones are, the same, but just a different name.
Right.
For us, we just have to have everything being hot, cold, or good and bad. And I think even we might have discussed this before. It's like hot is on a scale, somewhere warm is in the middle. But the water temperature, they're not opposite. They're just a different degree. It's no opposite. But we, in our mind, we understand everything in this polarity.
Well,
where we turn it into the opposite.
What I think is interesting though is like, you go back to morality, you go back to the feather in the heart. It's like, are you going to choose to be, I don't you're bad, but something where it's like not of balance, where it's like
balance.
Cause no harm. You posted one time the 42 laws of
Mott.
I love it.
Mayat or
cause no harm. It's like you are here to be of the energy, to manipulate energy, if you will, to create your own beingness, but you follow these rules where you cause harm to someone, then you create a ripple in the energy. You know what I mean? It's like, how do we find this balance of being without hurting someone else? Or is part of the hurt part of this new energy that is being created?
It's tough, because it really can get real basic. Like they say, to make an omelet, you got to break an egg. Because going to the extreme of cause no harm, it's like, okay, you can be completely vegan and you can walk around and not step on ants. But then what if you go so far like, well, maybe I won't eat it all because I don't want to harm any plants. So why would I eat lettuce?
Right.
Why would I eat, so it's like these degrees of what you think are bad. And then what you also determine as punishment, because people say, well, these bad things happen. And so what it is because you're out of balance, you're receiving what you feel is karma and these things as punishment to help you be put in balance. I don't get destroyed. Just say if I'm a hyena, my whole flock of hyena doesn't get destroyed because we ate a buffalo because we were hungry. But my whole flock gets destroyed if we go and attack every buffalo this month and we just eat to the point where gluttons, and now we have no more buffalo to live off. So now we're punished, right? Or what we seem is punished. It is called severity.
Right.
We do not want to be so extreme on one side to the left or the right. This creates severity. Even being too nice can be considered severity, right? Because you're going to receive suffering because you're too nice. So you allow people to kick you in the face.
Right.
Or are you going to receive suffering because you're just so belligerent that you're rejected as well? And so instead of being too nice or too mean, you have to be balanced. Because what we're interpreting as punishment or suffering is suffering from the severity to take us back towards the middle path. Always back towards the middle.
So do you find by learning more about ancient Egypt, tuning into these energies, do you find that it is bringing more balance in your energy field?
I think it helps me with the observation. For me, I feel like it's been a study of a long time of observing and studying what I believe and what I don't believe, and standing up for what I believe, and allowing myself to not be a person that runs with the crowd, but to remain true to myself is what led me to this place in the first place. How much of it actually changes me, I don't know. I know that I'm receiving from it, and what I've received from it still lessons on, are you going to listen to the messages that you get? Are you going to, because even while I was there, my trip was 40 days. So I would not say like the whole thing was peaches and creams. I was learning some lessons about, even before we got there, I've been truly observing this battle between men and women, I would say since 2020, like right before we met. And I think we discussed this before too, that, people said, oh, there shouldn't be a Father's Day. And that led me towards really having conversations with men and women about who are you and why, how are you affected by this thing, or what, trying to understand, trying to observe and gain perspective. And this to me is just a continuation of that same journey, because being there, of course, this is a place where most women do not work and most men are right out there in the public. I've had lots of conversations with men about what they think about life and marriage and sex and the world. And it is actually enough to fill a book. But then I've also been in situations where I'm observing like, oh, I forgot that life was this way, because I've been inside my home as an adult female for so long, kind of living my life a certain way, that not still understanding too that, I'll just say this, where I might see feminism, certain parts of feminism as extreme, then I can still see where there's still a ways to go with the way that men and women interact, but definitely with the way that men view sex and love, where I can still sympathize with them, because I feel like men have feelings and they deserve love. But then also I can still see where that there's a balance that still needs to be had, where I don't think that men should be weak powder puffs, but I do believe that there's some tweaking that needs to be done in their perspective on what they think is funny, or what they think is appropriate, or what they need to do when it comes with interactions with women. Because this is a place where men are very vocal and intense, intensely still passionate, where I feel like a lot of men in America are like, oh my God, I don't want to get in trouble.
Right.
Yeah, but then it's like these guys maybe haven't learned a few lessons yet. Like they're behind on some lessons, but then I think for me, I'm still just I'm observing, and I know that this thing they call the battle of the sexes, it doesn't need to be a battle, but it needs to be an observation of mutual love and respect. And somehow we think that women's movement, even the removal of slavery, or we're thinking that when something comes into law that it just should happen and it happens like this, and it really doesn't. It actually takes hundreds of years to integrate this proper thing. And so even when it comes to gender or sex or things like that, I see people rocking the boat to the extreme left and then people rocking the boat to the extreme right. But it did take some people to the extreme left and right so that we can finally come to this balance of this is how we all need to treat each other. This is how we all need to love each other. And it takes people on these extremes to make us observe what's happening and come to some type of balance. Does that make sense to you? Like, it's true what people are saying. All little boys don't want to play with trucks and all little girls don't want to play with stoves, but I don't necessarily want all kids to wear black or white. But these little movements have to happen so that we can course correct this whole thing. And so for myself, I'm finding myself not trying to be pulled to the left or to the right, but to stay as an observer and respecting people on both sides of this issue and moving forward with the things that I think are important. But when I was there, I was still learning. Listen to yourself. I also learned something else about myself. Like, it doesn't matter what language anyone is speaking. Trust your psychic insight and your intuition, because I know when someone is saying something unkind, or I know when someone is maneuvering against me, and I know there's these things that I know. And it just built my confidence in that, you know, I was still learning lessons while I was there. So, but were they different lessons that I was learning here? It really wasn't a different lesson. It was teaching me that no matter where you are in a land where you think is going to be more spiritual, you're still fighting the same battle, and you're still surrounded by the same energies. So it is no different. So don't slip. But
well, it seems like the main thing is, you know, you're getting to know who you are. And that's something in society, it seems like for quite a few generations, you're never taught who you are. You always follow the rules for someone else, you know what I mean? And so to really, truly know who you are, you know, sometimes you have to really learn how to love yourself, even the stuff you don't like. And that's hard because we're always like, you have to do this, you have to do that. You know, you have to get a degree in such and such, or, you know, you have to keep up with the Kardashians nowadays. You know, it's like, and how do you come to really, truly love who you are? You know, for women, it's like, I'm too fat, I'm too ugly, I'm too this, I'm too that. You know, we have this, and now men are starting to do that. You know, but how do we say, I love who I am? How do we not only trust those instincts, but accept ourselves for who we are and allow ourselves to not only observe, but to integrate who we are so we can be who we are meant to be?
This is so much deep practice. And this is what happened. It's like, because a lot of distractions were taken away, like I'm not here, I'm not at home busy. This was 100% living in the moment. Right. I mean, my phone wasn't working. My computer wasn't working. I couldn't get in. I was really forced to focus on everything that was coming to me. And so every day I was getting up, journaling about what it is, the lesson for today, and what thoughts are coming to you today, and trusting myself today. And I actually had gotten to the point where I literally left the people that I was with and I said, drop me off. And I trust that I'm making the right decision for myself, and I will just be here by myself for the 12 days that I have left, or I will leave early and I will make this decision on my own. But I was so surrounded by people so much, I really did need that time to get into my own space. So, and then I wanted to make what happened that I wanted to happen. And I took the reins and did that for myself. And not only did I stay those 12 days, I ended up staying another 10 days. So a total of 22 more days. So I actually left the group that I was with and I said, okay. And I thank you. I thank you for the lessons that I've learned. I thank you for taking me all these places. I thank you for everything that I received. But now Erika has to do this on her own. And I had seen myself getting to that point earlier where I said, oh, if I'm with this person, then I can be successful. If I'm with these people, if I'm having these friendships or partnerships or relationships, then I can have X, Y, Z. And I was thinking to myself, like, wow, this is really external of me, you know, that no matter what, if you know what God has for you, if you know what your team can do, if you know what your guides have been telling you all this time, was it really based on this person or was it based on who you are? No, let go. And I had to let go of this idea that if I was partnered with this particular person or people, that I would have everything that I wanted. Because I think that's what we do sometimes when it comes to, you know, relationships and business partners. And we have to understand, no, if this is the path that's cut out for you, it doesn't matter who's on your side, as long as you're the one standing up and walking the walk, it doesn't matter. You're going to go down this path because that path was chosen for you. How do you want to do it? And so, yeah, huge lessons constantly. And when I allowed myself that freedom, then I started really having a lot of fun on this trip. So, yeah, I was like, thank you for the lesson, because I think people would like to ascribe specialness to Egypt or to the people of Egypt, where, like, for example, I live next to this church, and some people won't understand, like, how can it be like that when they live next to the temple? I live next to this church, it's right in my parking lot. Am I involved with this church? Am I connected to it? Do I receive energy from it? No, it's, to me, this is just a church. There's a church right there, there's one right there. Like, I'm surrounded like 12 churches on my street, literally. But are these my doctrine? Are these my people? Or are these my connections? No one is any more spiritual because of where they live, right, or their sexuality, or, you know, men are not more, women are not more. But you are more spiritual because you choose to be and you choose to go down that path. That's the only thing that makes you more spiritual. So I said a lot, but I think it carries.
So you want to move to Luxor. What do you want to do there? Do you want to teach other people? Do you want to, what would you like to do? What would you like?
I like more so the term of holding space, because what happens, maybe you get to see me, talk to me, and know me, right? You're like, okay, I know Erika's not crazy.
That's awesome.
I know she's not gonna walk me 10 miles in one day. And I know she's gonna know how to nurture me, because this time when I went, I was working hard, sis. I'm just saying that, like, I was breaking toenails, I was breaking fingernails, and I was just like, whoo, wow. Now, and you know, I got to swim in the ice, in the water of the Isis temple, but I was like, at what risk? You know, but here it is. I'm a person that, like, knows how to comfort, nurture, and take care of people. And I want to allow them to come and visit, but in a loving, compassionate environment where you know that you're around someone who is loving and nurturing you, that can protect you, guide you, and speak your language. And eventually what it is that I want is not for people just to come and go on tours, but to come and make peace with the energy there, and to actually be more of a healing retreat type space is what I would like to build. Actually, like, teaching people about Egypt, I feel like that's a very small part, but more making space that you are learning to call in the energy that belongs to you and find yourself and find your own messages in these places. that this is you connecting back to your birthright and not me just giving you a list of facts about these places, because I just don't think you can just come and learn strictly by facts or strictly by feelings. I think it's just an integration of becoming who you, more so who you already are, and opening those doors up for yourself of the fullness of yourself. Come back to yourself, connect more with your higher self. A part of my meditations were that at first it was lift me above my energy, and I would see Sekhmet holding me in her hand, lifting me above my enemies. And I was like, I don't want to fight anymore. I don't want to fight. But then it moved forward in my meditations that I said, I have no enemies. I'm one with everyone around me, right? And that even people who think that they're working against me, you're still always going to be working in my favor. And I'm speaking this into existence. And so here's where we are, thinking that we're separate and that so-and-so's against me and people are attacking me, when all the pain that we allow is because we literally allow. And understanding that, oh, this doesn't have to hurt me. And actually it can work for me to my benefit. Therefore, I don't need to attack you.
Exactly.
I'm always where I need to be at all times. So for me, it's just more sharing that type of energy with people, that they can come more to terms with that. And I know there are a lot of tours and it's very glamorous and exciting. And I don't think I'm as maybe glamorous and exciting with the, the dimensions of the pyramids and the secret mystery, but I feel like you may have been there during the 18th dynasty, and maybe I was there during the 12th dynasty. So these same objects may have a different meaning to you, different messages, because of what belongs to us as individuals. So I want to know what Sophia as an individual, what does the obelisk mean to you? What message do you get? And yeah, over time, we can start to learn hieroglyphs and learn what the history says. But then we also know, can we 100% rely on anybody else's theories or histories? And here's a huge thing for me, because they say like Hatshepsut, she was a ruler for 19 years. In the Bible, it says 1 year to God is 1,000 years to man. So when I hear people quoting time periods and years and carbon dating, I'm not exactly tied to any particular belief when it comes to that.
Right.
Because was she there for 190 years, 19 years, 1900 years? Because there's a reason certain people were called gods, is because they lived so long, that they were there before your mother and they were there after your grandkids, that this is why they have the legend of being a god. But then when I'm seeing the recorded time, it says, oh, this happened 4,000 years ago. I'm not necessarily tied to any particular belief when it comes to that. I'm very loose and open to different ideas when it comes to that. So, but I think it also becomes a stumbling block, because you come outside of the heart and you're trusting your inner self and relying on these outwardly laid out facts that you have. And that's why I want people to learn to be flexible in their thinking, of let go of these boundaries that someone wrote. Because we also have a Bible, we have a lot of books, they have a lot of schools and schools of thinking, we have television, and things become very rigid, and anything outside of that becomes a miracle, when it really isn't a miracle, is it? It's just the way that it is. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm super chatty. So
I love it. I love it. Well, you are doing so many wonderful things. So when you do move to Egypt, you see it happening. Keep me posted. Let me know. I will be happy to, share what you are doing and, put it out to other people that may not otherwise hear about it. I think that's an amazing thing that you're doing. And I'm very,
I know. I'm really excited. So you can see on the wall.
I love it.
My sweetheart. And I knew, I was saying last year to my teacher, Magical Michelle, who took me on the trip in the first place, right before the trip, I said, what I really want, and I hadn't been able to say I want in a long time. I teach vision board classes where but I hadn't done a vision board for myself for so long because I wasn't sure what I wanted. I think a lot of times too with women and men, like we want relationships, but not sure what kind. And I think sometimes you think it has to always be marriage or a particular thing, but it doesn't, we go to these different times where we can tolerate or let in a certain thing into your life at a certain time. But last year, I just really reached the point where I really was like, I really want my better half, that I could be walked across the street blindfolded and I could trust this person to take me across the street, that if I was sick, I could trust them with my home and my expenses, and a person that I really trust. And I just really got to this point. And even when I went on this trip this time, my friend said, I promise by the end of this trip, you're going to have everything you want. And when I broke off after that 21 days, immediately I met this person that stood out and has proven to be literally the love of my life, that I'm like, who are you in this past life or what? Like, who are you? Because no one says these beautiful things, but not just that he says it. It's just an embodiment of a person that I look at and I'm just like, I can just smile and you can just smile and I can just smile. And we look like two stupid kids just being like,
I love it.
Like because our heart is smiling, and literally he's like, oh, I try to think with my heart. And I'm like, what? Have you met a man that says they think with their heart? And then
that's so beautiful.
And then I put our charts together and I was like, there wasn't one where it was like, be careful. You know how usually you put the two charts and it's like, well, you got to work on this. And it was like, no, you guys are great. Like, I was just like, oh my God, like I'm very much sure, very much positive. So it all just.
And he's in Luxor?
Actually, he's in Denmark.
Oh, he's in Denmark. Oh, wow.
Yeah, but so we're both making this transition where we're coming to Luxor together.
Oh my gosh, that's wonderful. That's so
an Egyptian that lives in Luxor, or an Egyptian that lives in Denmark. And so we're gonna meet back and come back to yeah. So it's just and that can share my vision. And as I'm talking about Newton, all these things, it's like, oh, wow, exciting. Like he's just as excited about the things that we're talking about. And I'm just like amazed.
Wow.
Plus too, I want to say this for people, like sometimes you have a dream or something and you're working on something and maybe that person isn't necessarily into it, but they don't have to block your light and get credit and take credit for who you are or take over your project and be seen and just want you to glow. Like this is a huge sign when someone can allow you to be big and they don't need to necessarily have the spotlight. Because I think a lot of during this time, like people are like, oh, I do yoga. I want somebody who does yoga. Or I'm a teacher. I want somebody who's a teacher. Like we kind of want to sometimes match up. And I don't know. I that's something that for the last few years is why I wasn't able to say what I want, because the mindset of the time was what you want people who are doing exactly what you're doing. And it's like, really though, do you? Because I find that sometimes maybe people who are doing something different maybe gives your mind a break from you focusing there, getting stuck inside your tunnel, and can pull you out of that tunnel and you guys can meet, in La La Land somewhere. So
that's beautiful. Well, I will definitely go to Egypt when you're set up. I'm just like, hey, Erika. It's like, yes. Show me right.
Yeah, so we can eat some fruit off some trees right off the Nile.
Oh, that'd be so beautiful. And just
it was wonderful.
So I'm so excited for everything you're doing. And I'm so glad we've kept in touch, and
yes. I'm watching you and your daughter and I'm like amazed. Like
she's quite something. She has a new song that's coming out soon, so I'm really proud of her.
Every time she does something, I'm just like, and it's not that the person can't, but you just really love, they got that song, Don't Believe Me, Just Watch.
Right.
And it's like, you just one miracle right after another. Cause I feel like everything she does is like a miracle, like beautiful.
She's an amazing spirit. So I'm proud of her. So I remember you said you wanted to mention something about Universal Studio.
Oh my goodness. If anybody, I mean, you can look on my Facebook. I went to Universal twice. Now, one time I was there and we went past Anubis and I was just like, ugh, why is he so irritable? And I didn't know why. When I got to the end of the line, my purse popped and all the contents fell out and I had to buy a new purse. And I was like, didn't relate the two. The next time I went, no one was in the line. It was just me and my son. And I went under the rope and I got so hung up in the rope. My bra strap was completely tangled. I felt like an idiot. I was so embarrassed. And it would not move left, right. It wouldn't come loose. And I had to pop it. So now I'm walking around with a broken bra and I get towards Anubis and I'm watching him and he's there kneeling like this, but they have him dangling in the air and they got ropes around his neck, around his arms and around him, and he's hanging off the floor, not really thinking that the same way that you get an Anubis and put it on your altar, it's the same thing as having that thing, like even though that's universal, even though whatever, it might be made out of stucco, the energy of Anubis is still in that object. And so what you've done is taken a deity and tied it up in rope and humiliating him and hanging him from the ceiling. And I believe this is why twice my clothing, an article of mine broke, but that also I was forced to pay attention to him. And when I went past him, there was a negative buzz towards me. Sophia, you would not even believe this. Even the other day I did an interview and we were talking and the man played back the sound and it said help in the sound. And I said, do you talk to Anubis? This is like almost a whole year later, I'm doing an interview. And he's like, what do you mean? He shows me his wall, he shows me his tattoo, and I have the Anubis picture on my table. And during that time, I kept running into all these dogs that look like Anubis. And then I got a free gift on my wall, a free gift of Anubis. And I was like, it's like this little reminder, like, I should finish my letter writing. What should I do? I need to, but I felt like it wasn't going anywhere. But I feel like it was like a little tap on the shoulder to me to say, go back and finish doing what you're doing, because they, whatever their belief is, it's a deity. It needs to come down on the floor and he doesn't need to be tied up with ropes, because it's actually like humiliating to have him in that position. So I'm hoping that other people, if you know have you ever seen it? Even if you haven't seen it, I can show you pictures of it, but to write Universal Studios Orlando and let them know you need to let Anubis down off out of the ropes.
So was that was it outside of a ride or?
It's called the Mummy Ride. So in the Mummy movie, but I don't even know if you see Anubis in the Mummy movie, but in the ride, it's supposed to be like the shipping container that they're that the ship that's going over there. Remember how they had to jump off of the ship, it caught fire, but they're loading. It's supposed to be like them loading him onto the ship, but they got him all tied up in these ropes. So this is his life every day, being tied up in these ropes while people go past. And I don't think anybody thinks anything of it. And I'm not sure if I would have paid attention if my clothing didn't break twice. So I kind of see that as a warning sign. But now I have like a third sign with the recording that Matthew Turner made from the Matrix Minds. And he played it back and let people listen to it. And they said it was speaking in Arabic and it was saying help.
Wow.
Help. So I'm like, okay, back to square one. I got to get back to work on writing my letters and trying to get Anubis to be able to sit on the floor properly and not dangling in the air, right?
So yeah, I'm gonna go look that up. So
yeah,
cool. Well,
yeah, for sure. Now it makes me wonder about Universal in California, right? I wonder if it's different, if it looks different.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
It's just so interesting when you have Taurus, you have so many different energies going on too. It's just, it's come to the point where I hate big crowds. It's like
Totally. I will say this, that last year we went to do a clearing at Disney. And as soon as we got to Disney, my forehead was fluttering. We went to Magic Mountain. I felt like my bones were being pulled down to the ground. And I was thinking, how do they get away with having this kind of energy here? It was completely negative. And you know how it says the happiest place on earth? It was like the most negative mood people. Kids were not happy. And then the next day we went to Universal, and it is honestly a whole different energy. I've never felt that negativity or even that buzzing. This was in my third eye buzzing at Disney, that I never felt that energy at Universal.
Can you imagine what it'd be like if everyone was able to like really tune into energies, and it's like, what would that be like,
I don't know. Because I think right now they're doing it, but they have no, how do you say, like, they don't internalize to be like, why am I angry? Why am I? Because they're receiving it all the time. They're being bombarded with it. They just don't know how to process it.
Right. Or be aware of it.
Or be aware of it in any way. So, yeah.
It's definitely interesting times right now. Very interesting. Definitely a lot of shifts.
Very interesting to watch people in their loops, because people are in these loops and you're like, do you not see the pattern? Well, and even when people are trying to get over on you, like people trying to get over on you, trying to manipulate you, and you're like, I see you. Like, do you not understand? I can see you. And they're just going on thinking that they're getting away with something. And it's like, no.
And that's why I think what you're doing is really important. When people want to start learning, how do I become more aware of it? They go to someone like you to help them hold space. And
I feel like I hold space in my inbox for a lot of people, but I need to be doing it more. And so my new website will be launching soon. So I'll definitely keep you posted. So
I'm happy to share. And, when it's up and running, when you are there, let's get another Zoom.
Like a cope, like, I like to teach the world to sing in perfect harmony.
There you go. Gotta sing it, baby.
Yeah, I like to teach the world to sing. Yeah, I remember that song. Like, here's a Coke and a smile, y'all. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Erika. I think you are absolutely wonderful. Your soul is so beautiful, and I'm grateful to know you. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.